PhD, who is an instructor, actually professor, assistant professor, unless he's gotten promoted recently at the University of North Alabama. And I'll let him explain, some of his areas. Although from his profile on the University of North Alabama site, he does have a doctorate from Mississippi State in kinesiology, exercise science, and several other degrees, graduate and undergraduate. And his research interests include nutrition, exercise physiology, cardiometabolic diseases, inflammation, and oxidative stress. We've asked him to join us tonight to talk mainly about nutrition and how that relates to arm wrestling, although I'm sure we will get into some other areas as well. And as much for his benefit as for yours, I'm going to ask the three people here from the 98 to briefly introduce themselves, so Hunter knows where we're coming from. So, Ryan.
My name's Ryan Grondin, and I am just an average arm wrestler, 98%er. So basically, we just kind of started this podcast as a way for us amateur guys to have somewhere to talk about arm wrestling.
Paul?
All right, yeah, I'm Paul Linn. Thanks for tuning in, guys. As far as my background goes, in college I studied exercise science, got my master's in physiology, and then went on to I played college football, played overseas afterwards, went into coaching. I run a strength program now, so that's the application of my education. That's the extent of it. And obviously I've delved into the arm wrestling world pretty deeply, to the point which I've gotten to some of the higher levels. So now I'm feeling my way through a lot of these things that we're probably going to talk about: nutrition, weight control, weight management, weight cutting, things of that nature. And it's interesting to hear that your special interests are inflammation. I think we can dig into that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, and Dave Schell, I actually have a PhD in a considerably less useful area, namely history. At least a little less useful as getting a full-time job. And most recently, I'm now retired, but most recently I taught history at several community colleges in Eastern Pennsylvania. And I just got into arm wrestling about 6 years ago, and I'm now age 72. And so, there are a few people my age doing it, but, not too many that started at my age. So just, having a good old time, keeping myself active. So, Hunter, if you would, how about tell folks a little bit about, your background, and then we'll, hit you with some questions.
Yeah, perfect. So first off, just appreciate you guys having me. My name's Hunter Waldman. I'm an assistant professor at the University of North Alabama. Did my undergrad and master's at the University of North Alabama. Got a college scholarship to go play football there. It's a small Division I school. I played linebacker, and I was actually interesting, Dave. I was a history major as well. And then I had about 7 or 8 concussions, got released from the team due to some metabolic issues. And I was 205 when I went into college, and ended up leaving college at 250. So that's kind of what I had to be at to play the position of linebacker. So anyways, I had high blood pressure, some cholesterol issues, and knew I needed to get it taken care of, essentially. So really dived into nutrition, ended up leaving the history field and going down the nutrition rabbit hole, got my master's in it. Went to Mississippi State to do my doctorate in exercise physiology, but my major professor, Matt McAllister, is at Texas State now. His PhD was in nutrition. So a lot of my work, a lot of the way I actually lost a lot of that weight was via low carbohydrate diet. And so going into my doctorate, was thinking everybody needed to be on a low carbohydrate diet. And I don't think like that anymore, but I did then. And Dr. McAllister and I did a good bit of research together. And during that time as well, was hired on with Gatorade. So I was like one of 7 researchers traveling, sports scientists traveling the U.S., working with professional athletes on pretty much nutrition and hydration, electrolyte balance, and some other issues there. And graduated, and now got a solid research team at UNA and doctoral students and master students. And our lab is essentially going down 3 rabbit holes. So we're heavily focused on some antioxidant research, specifically an antioxidant known as astaxanthin. May probably have never heard of it, but another supplement known as exogenous ketones. We're doing a good bit of work with ketones, and then also a lot of metabolism work, just trying to figure out what causes metabolism to essentially become impaired in people, and then how do we optimize it? And then once you optimize it, we see a lot of optimization and performance.
I'm the impaired version, and Paul is the optimal version of that.
Yeah, and actually,
Man, we could flip that for you. It's not too hard based on what I found so far.
There you go, Ryan.
I'm ready.
Yeah, easy.
yeah, interestingly enough, of course, Scott Lyons, that we had on our first program, also started as a history major and escaped from it. I don't know if you were aware of that, but his bachelor's
I
degree
wasn't.
was history as well. And I think before I give Paul the opportunity to go into something heavy, something you just said suggested. I did have some. I asked my team today. Just came back from a practice at the local arm wrestling group, and I said, this is what he specializes in. Somebody have a questions they'd like to ask him, and actually, the one person said, "Well, ask him for a recommendation for a low carb, high protein snack."
Yeah, low carb, high protein snack. I mean, there's several varieties. I mean, there's so much the problem with nutrition is there's so much context that's missing. Without talking, so if we're just assuming this is a healthy individual, there aren't any. He's not lactose intolerant. There's nothing else. Gluten issues. Easy ones, beef jerky, any type. There's so many protein bars out there, and individuals will get, they'll say, well, what about artificial sugar? And it's not an issue. Being overweight is much more of an issue than artificial sugars you'll find in any protein bar or protein shake. There's a lot of high protein Greek yogurts out there. Those are probably the main ones. I mean, usually what I do is I just have a protein shake ready to go. I don't care if it's hot or cold. And then I'll usually have some type of fruit on me, whether it's an apple or a banana. And even though it's quote unquote low, there's still carbohydrates there. It's not the same carbohydrate load that you would get from a bag of potato chips or from a soda or something else that someone might go towards.
Okay, excellent. Paul, do you want to dive in?
Yeah, not Twinkies.
Yeah. Ryan came.
Not Twinkies.
I don't actually eat those though.
Just there.
Yeah.
So just a fair warning. But throughout this thing, I'm probably gonna geek out real hard because I do that thing and I probably will again. And depending on how it flows, I'll probably have 1,000 questions. But being that, so I get questions from all over the globe all the time about training, weight cutting, nutrition, all of that. Some I can answer, some I'm answering in my opinion, whatever the case may be. So in the sport of arm wrestling, especially when you get to the higher levels, weight cuts are always a thing. So people are going to figure out where is their optimal competition weight, and they're going to it's usually 10 to 15 pounds lighter than what they walk around at when they're eating a dirty diet. And at the higher levels, that weight cut and nailing that weight cut is a huge advantage if you can do it right. Mm-hmm. So I think everyone does it differently. And I'm interested in what, from a general perspective, is the most optimal way to lose. Obviously understanding there's a water cut involved, but let's say 33% of the weight that you need to lose to make the weight is going to have to come from fat or actual body. And let's say the other 66% is going to be some sort of water cut. What is your recommendation as far as dietary changes? Let's call it 3 to 4 weeks out.
Yeah, so I don't compete in arm wrestling, but I compete in jiu-jitsu. I'm a purple belt and been in Brazilian jiu-jitsu for several years now. So we have weight cuts in there as well. If it's anything like, so you said 3 to 4 weeks out, I mean, you're really talking for the most part, the only way to effectively cut weight in such a short amount of time, because usually what I'll do with my jiu-jitsu guys or myself, I mean, we're talking 16 weeks out because we can figure out the competition date. And then we could just work backwards, and it's pretty easy changes from there for most people. But 3 to 4 weeks, I mean, the easiest change is going to be just dropping carbohydrates. The reason you would want to do that is so anytime you have carbohydrates, I guess I assume I'm talking, the audience is just general knowledge for the most part in terms of their education. So without, I guess, getting too deep in like chemistry stuff, carbohydrates, every time you consume them, they have water that they take with them. And so that's one of the reasons if you have a really high carbohydrate meal, let's say at night you have some pasta, you wake up the next morning, you're bloated. It's because those carbohydrates are holding all that water. So one of the easiest ways to cut water or cut weight pretty quickly is start dropping your carbohydrate intake. And usually what I tell individuals is you don't have to go low, keto or low carbohydrate. Just figure out how many carbohydrates are you taking in general on a daily basis. That's pretty easy to do. You can do a food log, write down your meals each day, and then over a 3-day course, just average it. And on average, let's say you're consuming 300 grams of carbohydrate a day. Okay, so if we've got 4 weeks until our competition day, we need to lose X amount of weight. A good rule of thumb is you could drop 25 to 50 grams of carbs, maybe upwards of 75 grams each week. And then in the last week, and that should drop, again, context, depending on what the person looks like. But if they've got that kind of weight to lose, they'll see a pretty quick, anywhere from 4 to 8 pounds, probably within 3 to 4 weeks, they'll drop. And that's just water in itself because they're not taking in as much carbohydrate. And then the last week, the week leading up to competition, those 3 or 4 days, you want to about 7 days out, you start really hammering the water. Hammering the. Say it again.
Water cycle.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because what essentially ends up, ends up happening.
What I do when I pass along is 6 days out, 2 gallons the first day, 2 gallons the second day, gallon and a half the third, gallon the fourth, half a gallon the fifth, nothing on the sixth.
Yeah, and so what happens? You've got this what's known as your aldosterone, renin, angiotensinogen system. It's a bunch of hormones that fancy names, but essentially what they do is they get upregulated and they start to recognize that, okay, we got a lot of water coming in, and so we need to flush all this excess water out. Well, by the time you drop the water down until you're not consuming anything, like Paul just said, by day 6, the system, it takes a minute to catch up to what's going on. So it's still flushing all the excess water out plus some. But by the time it recognizes, we don't have that same water coming in we did 6 days ago, it's really too late. It's flushed out excess water. And so you've dropped another, again, depending on body size. I mean, you can go anywhere from 3 pounds to 15 pounds. I mean, it just depends on the size of the person. So the only thing that's not too, Paul, what you just laid out is pretty common. It's kind of long, again, mine's 7 days, but pretty much along the same lines of what I do as well. And then on competition day, after weighing in, I'm pretty much just wetting my mouth up until I weigh in. And then once I weigh in, I'm hammering the water. Really, I'm hammering Gatorades. I'm hammering anything that essentially the carbohydrates in the water at that point. So to try and get my body weight back up, to refill those carbohydrate stores that you would have lost over those few weeks.